Hi there, it's Florence here and I'm back with another episode of my knitting video podcast thing. Now I've been super busy for the last 2 weeks since I filmed the previous episode. My final year uni dissertation is due in around now, or at least the draft of it is, so I've been super busy working on that. And a lot of you guys ask me, Florence, if you're so busy with uni work all of the time, how do you find the time to knit? I don't know what it is about me, but the more busy I am with work, the more I knit, just to keep things balanced. And so in the 2 weeks since the last episode, I have finished 3 garments, 2 of which are fingering weight and 2 of which I hadn't even cast on in the previous episode. I've also finished a pair of socks and an accessory, and I've cast on another pair of socks which I've made good progress on, and a much larger garment as well. So I have a lot to show, and I'm especially excited to show you one of my larger finished objects. I normally show the largest finished object first, but since I'm wearing one of my finished objects, I guess we'll start with that one. So, as you can probably see, today I'm wearing the smallest amount of knitting that I've worn in any of these episodes ever, probably. I got this denim jumpsuit a couple of weeks ago and I was so excited about it because I felt like it really needed a tiny knit scarf. I knitted a tiny scarf last summer. I made the petite knit Sophie scarf back when everybody was making petite knit Sophie scarves. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. I strongly believe that the spectrum of soft to not soft and the spectrum of itchy to not itchy are 2 distinct axes in a yarn classification plane. Like, you can have yarn that's very soft and also very itchy, and you can have yarn that's not soft at all but also not itchy at all. The yarn that I used to knit my Sophie scarf, which is Sandnesgarn alpaca silka, it's like right over in the soft yet also itchy corner of this plane. I think it's because it's alpaca, and I do find alpaca to be a little bit itchier than other fibres, especially in warm weather and especially when it's tied around my neck. An example of the opposite kind of yarn would be the Knitting for Olive heavy merino, which I find to not be especially soft, but it's not itchy at all as well. So the other issue is that this denim jumpsuit is obviously blue, and the Sophie scarf that I knitted is a mid-blue colour, and so I didn't think they'd go very well together. So when Garnog Slikt, who is a Norwegian designer who, well, I've knitted quite a lot of her patterns before and I enjoy them very much, she asked me if I would like to test knit her new tiny scarf pattern, and so I of course agreed. The yarn was not sponsored, so I could buy whatever I wanted, and I ended up going with this. This is Cardiff Cashmere Classic, which I've used quite a few times before for other small projects. It is probably the nicest cashmere yarn I've used. Like, if you want to spend that money on cashmere, this would really be the one that I recommend because I don't think you'll be disappointed. It is very average price between cashmere yarns, I would say. I think it costs about £15 for 25 grams, give or take. And that measures just over 100 meters. I want to say 110 or 115, something like that. It's a light DK weight, so it probably would look best knit up on a 3.5mm needle, but you could probably do it on a 4mm needle as well. This scarf is brioche and knit on a 3mm needle, and it looks really nice. So I originally wanted to do a brighter colour. Blue is sort of my go-to colour when I want to wear a little bit of colour, but obviously with a blue denim jumpsuit, I didn't think that a blue scarf would match that well. I thought about red, which I love as a colour, but I don't think it matches the rest of my wardrobe especially well. And I also thought yellow could be really cute, like a light yellow, which Cardiff Cashmere do some lovely light yellows. But I'm blonde and I'm not sure yellow would go that well with my hair. I don't know, maybe I'll make another one in a light yellow because I was definitely tempted. So I ended up going for a colour which, it looks quite similar to a colour that I showed in the last episode that I just bought. Obviously I'm going through a bit of a phase where I'm really enjoying this sort of colour. I think it's called Circus, but it's kind of like a dark grey but also green. It's definitely a very greenish grey. I would classify it as a green colour, I think. It's very, very beautiful, and this yarn was such a joy to knit with. I've never knitted a full-size garment using this yarn, and I so badly want to. I know that Petite Knit is soon, I think, going to release a t-shirt that is knitted up in this yarn, which I'm so tempted by. I guess she also released the Elizabeth blouse a few months ago, which is knitted up in Cardiff Cashmere Classic. And the problem is it is just going to be £150 to £200 for the project, and that is a lot of money to spend on one project. I don't know, I'm still thinking about it. But if I did, this would definitely be a colour that I'd consider because I think it's absolutely stunning. So yes, I bought one skein to make the smaller size of this scarf. I think the pattern is called the brioche bandana, I'm not sure if I mentioned this. It does come in 2 sizes and it's knitted in a brioche stitch on 3mm needles. I don't knit brioche very often. I think I just didn't like how it looked, but I feel like it's becoming a little bit trendier again now. A lot of designers are releasing more brioche patterns, and so I'm kind of feeling the urge to knit it again. So it was nice to do a small pattern to get some practice in, and because I feel like it's a tricky thing to fix if you mess up and don't immediately notice. So yeah, it's a little bit nerve-wracking to knit at times, and I enjoyed having the opportunity to do so on a small project, which I can fully rip back if I make a mistake. With that being said, I don't think I made any mistakes when I was knitting this, so it was a pretty straightforward process. I knitted it in 2 evenings, and I have this much left. I haven't weighed it. I will weigh it probably before this video goes up and put on my Ravelry how much I used exactly. Now, I don't want to take this off because I've sort of put it on and arranged it, and I feel like I'm not going to be able to get this look right if I take it off to show you exactly what it looks like. I will try and take some pictures and put them in so you can see. It has increases on the sides of the scarf. So the side edges of the scarf aren't smooth, they sort of step out, alternating between the two sides, and it gives this really interesting organic look that I like a lot. It's not symmetrical in the usual sense, it's rotationally symmetrical, which I think is really cool. And I love the way that it sits and sort of goes out to the side and has these little lumps on the side. I don't know, there's something about it that I find so elegant. I'm pretty sure I will end up making another one of these, especially if I end up wearing this one a lot. Maybe in that yellow that I was so tempted by. I don't know, I'm not very good with colour. My taste in colour is simultaneously the thing that people compliment me the most on this channel, and also the thing that people seem to dislike the most. People think that my taste in colour is really bland, which I suppose it is, but I feel like I know what I like and I know what I reach for a lot, which is generally cool tones, neutrals, and then very soft blues and greens. And so I stick to that and I feel good about it. But maybe some of you guys who know more about colour than me can tell me whether a light yellow would be a good move. I think there's a particular yarn by Cardiff Cashmere, the shade is called Cowrie, and I think it is lovely. I'm really tempted to knit up another scarf with that. Okay, I think that's about it for talking about the tiny scarf, and I guess I'll talk about sort of the main event of this video. Before that though, I will just mention, I haven't bought any new yarn this video, which is great because there was a lot of new yarn in the last video that I am now working through. But I did get this lovely bag. I'm not sure if it counts as a knitting thing. It's from a company called Minuk, and I believe they make mostly project bags. Like it's a knitting person who makes these bags. I've been thinking about it for a bit because they're rather pricey, so it wasn't something I could buy without thinking about it, but I'm so glad that I did, and I love the colour. Anyway, as promised, I'm going to move on to the main piece, I suppose, that I want to talk about this video. I have been on a mission for a long time now to knit the perfect striped t-shirt. I feel like I'm quite picky about what a knit t-shirt should look like, especially a striped one. I wanted the stripes to be relatively fine. I wanted them to go all the way up to the collar. So I know a lot of the knit t-shirts that I see, the stripes sort of start at the bottom of the yoke or at least over the shoulders, and I didn't want that. I wanted stripes all over, completely consistent and balanced between the two colours. And then more on the topic of what a knitted t-shirt should look like for me, it has to be fingering weight. I don't particularly like working with summer fibres, I don't enjoy the knitting experience very much, and because I live in the UK where it's not especially warm in the summer, I am fine wearing fibres like merino in the summer, but I probably wouldn't want them to be knitted up anything larger than a DK waist, and I think a fingering weight for a t-shirt just looks much more t-shirty and reads less as a short sleeve jumper. I also didn't want a raglan, sort of on a similar note, because I wanted that classic t-shirt fit. A raglan kind of still reads as more short sleeve jumper to me, and I wanted it to be definitely a t-shirt. So after searching for a long time for a pattern that would meet all of these requirements and failing to find one, I decided to just wing it and knit something up without a pattern. I showed the yarn that I used to knit this up in my last episode, where I'd actually just got it. I bought it from my Ivory Room, which is a new yarn shop in London. They have a lot of very interesting yarn there, which I haven't seen in other shops in the UK, or I just haven't seen in person before. So this yarn in particular, this is pascuali. The yarn is called Saphira, and it's 75% merino wool and 25% silk. Compared to other yarn with a similar fibre content, this is especially soft. It is some of the nicest yarn that I have ever touched. It is definitely a little bit on the pricey side, but I think what especially drew me to it was the colour selection. My Ivory Room didn't have the full colour selection, but the colours they did have were really my kind of thing. A lot of blues and cool tones that were very muted. They were really pretty. And these two colours in particular were just so cool to me. This is the colour that I said was not dissimilar to my scarf. It's called Olive, and it's not black, it's a really dark and not overly saturated green. And then this lighter colour is called Taupe, and it's kind of like a creamy or pale grey colour but with pretty strong green undertones. So the two of them together look really nice. Like, it's definitely a green striped shirt, but it's not too green at all. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but they're both really unique and really special colours, and they go together so well that I decided to spend the money and get them and try and make this t-shirt. I was not expecting to like the yarn as much as I did. Like, this is probably my favourite yarn that I've ever knitted anything with. It feels incredibly soft, the stitches look beautiful, it's so even, and it is really the perfect summer fibre for me. It's so soft I'm worried it might pill quite a bit, but the silk might help with that. I'm not sure, we'll have to see. So I only bought 2 skeins of each colour, and I really didn't want to have to buy an extra because it was quite pricey. These are 200 metres each for 50 grams, and I knitted the Anchor tee early last year, I think, the tee knit pattern, and for that I only had 3 balls of the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, which adds to 750 metres in total, and I created a t-shirt that I actually really liked the fit of. So I know that I can get a t-shirt out of 750 metres, but I was a little bit worried about the colour imbalance. I wanted the neck and the cuffs and the ribbing around the bottom to all be done in the darker colour, and so I was a little bit worried, not that I'd run out of yarn overall, but that I'd run out of the dark green. It certainly was close. I was knitting this up with a set of weighing scales next to me, and every time I did a stripe I'd weigh the dark green, and I figured out that it would take me about 4 grams, I think, to knit each stripe. And so when I started the bottom ribbing, I had 10 grams left. I was going to do 8 rounds of ribbing to match the collar and cuffs that I'd already done, but there's also one setup round before I started the ribbing and then the bind off, so that was probably going to take 10 grams. Actually, I guess going down a needle size meant it took up a little less because I do have this much left. I know that this isn't very extreme for yarn chicken compared to a lot of people, but I don't play yarn chicken. Like, I don't want to put myself through that. I want my knitting to be a relaxing and stress-free experience, and so this is very little yarn for me to have left over. Like, I don't want to run out during a bind off or not be able to have enough to weave in ends nicely or anything like that, so I'm always sort of cautious. I always buy more rather than too little. So yes, I knitted as many stripes as I could. I wouldn't have been able to get an extra stripe out of it, I don't think, and I didn't really try it on. I was like, this is the length it is, and if this is too short, I'll worry about that afterwards, buy an extra ball, whatever. But actually, after I did block it and I could finally try it on and get a good sense of the length, I really like the length. I think it's perfect. I think it is that classic, not cropped t-shirt length that I was really looking for, and I am just in love with this piece. It has a saddle shoulder, first of all, so you can see the stripes come out over here, and then I just increase for the sleeves only. And then at the bottom, it kind of goes into a raglan, but the rate of increases in the raglan varies quite a lot to get the most rounded shape around the bottom of the armhole. The yoke is relatively short. There's not a lot of space underneath the arms. Obviously, because I want to wear this in the summer, I don't want something that's right up in my armpit. So there's a little bit of room, but I did want it to be a nice fit, because when you're doing a more fitted garment, there is a lot less room to sort of not shape things so perfectly, if that makes any sense. The collar and the cuffs are just 8 rounds of rib. I didn't want to do a folded collar because, again, sometimes that can feel more short sleeve jumper than t-shirt. The only change that I would make to this top if I was knitting it again is that I would slightly round out just the edges of the collar. I don't know if you can see, but I think it comes out at too steep of an angle from the shoulder. I'd like to just round it out so it comes down a little bit more quickly at the start and then comes around. So I do want to knit a second of these. I really love this t-shirt, and I also would like to maybe write a pattern for it because I think that I can, and also because I feel like it's something that I've established probably isn't super available on the market. Like, I'm sure there are similar things, but for my very specific vision of what I wanted, I really have searched a lot to try and find a pattern, and I couldn't. So if there's anybody else who has very similar feelings to me on knitted t-shirts, this might be useful. Sometimes when I knit things without a pattern, I don't feel like it's something that will translate very well to a resin pattern. Like, if it's too reliant on my proportions, or a lot of the time when I knit more fitted things, and it factors in the bust measurement and the waist measurement and the hip measurement, like that knitted dress, which a lot of people have asked me for a pattern for, I'm kind of reluctant to make it into a pattern because people with the same bust measurement, for example, or who would wear the same clothing size, will have very different waist measurements or hip measurements. And so for a fitted garment like that, it's quite difficult to grade a pattern in such a way that it will fit everybody the way that I want it to. But I think a really classic fit t-shirt like this is something that I can probably write a pattern that I'm happy with for. I'll hold it up so that you can see the length. It's definitely a sort of not quite cropped, classic t-shirt length, and it's a fit with maybe 3 or 4 centimeters of positive ease. Not a lot, but enough that it's relaxed. I'm just so excited to wear it this summer, and what I was thinking I might do, because it is fingering weight and it doesn't use very much yarn, by weight at least, I thought that this could be a really great candidate for a cashmere garment. I would only need 4 or 5 skeins of fingering weight cashmere to get a t-shirt out of it, and I know that I really love the fit of this one, so it's probably something that I'd be willing to invest that amount of money into. Also, like I said, it doesn't get that hot most of the time, touch wood, in the UK during the summer, so I can probably get away with wearing a cashmere short sleeve jumper t-shirt kind of thing for a lot of the year. I think I've said enough about the t-shirt, so I should move on to something else because I have 2 more garments. I will start off with the one that I had cast on and was a work in progress in the last video. I've been wearing this, so not only is it stretched out a little bit, but also I feel like it just doesn't look very good when I hold it up. I've been wanting a halter neck camisole, and so I did knit one. I truly cannot find a way to hold this so that you can actually see what's going on here. So this is a halter neck camisole. As you can see, it's sort of low in the back, and then it has this strap around the neck. I knitted it using merilin from Isager. It really didn't use very much at all, not even close to 2 full skeins. I think it only took about 350 meters of yarn. The exact amount is on my Ravelry, so you can check there. In fact, as usual, all of the colors, yarn names, brands, they will all be linked in the description, so they're all there, because I will definitely forget to say sometimes. I don't know what this color is called. Izzy, I don't really have color names, but it's the cream one. It should be obvious enough. I think it's 80% merino and 20% linen, and I went for it because, as I said, I don't especially like knitting with plant fibres, so I thought this would behave a little bit more like wool, since it is 80% wool, but that the linen might give it a little bit of a summery look, which it does. It really does have these sort of linen-y fibres coming off it, which might bother some people, but I think are quite nice. Now, the reason why I'm not immediately jumping to write up a pattern for this is because while I like how this top fits me and I'm pretty happy with it, it's a perfect example of one of those pieces where I'm not super confident with how it will translate to different body types. Like, because I'm knitting something for me, I can try it on as I go and check that, especially with a fitted camisole like this, where there's not so much fabric, check that it's covering everything that I want it to cover and that I feel secure enough in it. And if I'm grading it to other sizes, that's not something that I can easily check. I might do, but it would require some thought and I'm not feeling super confident about it. For example, it has a little bit of a wider sort of square neckline, like this, and then the strap comes up from here. And so if that square neckline is too narrow for a certain size, they might not get the coverage that they want. But if it's too wide, then because it's halter neck and the straps join behind the neck, they're held quite close together, and so it might sort of pull that front top edge in a little bit, and it might be sort of saggy and not lay flat. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's the sort of thing that I'm concerned about when I'm worrying about grading this to multiple sizes. At the very least, I've really enjoyed wearing it, and it is what I was looking for when I started to knit this project up. It was a pretty fun and relaxing knit, and I will definitely make sure to put some pictures in because I'm aware of the fact that it doesn't show up very well on camera at all when I just hold it up. I did knit this one bottom up. I spoke a little bit more in the last video about why I did that, when normally I avoid bottom up garments at all costs. But TLDW, basically it's because when I knit things like this, I find that the straps are often either too short or too long, or they fit well at first but then stretch out or something. And so I think when you're knitting it bottom up, and so the last thing you do is knit the straps and then seam them together, it's a little bit easier to unpick that, adjust the length and put them back together again. With that being said, I did put I-cord edges all the way around the neckline, so I will have to unpick some, if not all of that I-cord to be able to adjust the strap length. I think I was a little bit too cautious and made the strap slightly shorter than I want, so I might go back and adjust that, but I'm not too sure, because it might stretch out a bit over time as well. So yeah, I'm not as excited about this as I am the t-shirt, but if it wasn't in the same episode with the t-shirt that I am so happy with and so excited about, I feel like I would definitely be talking a little bit more highly about this, because it's not a bad garment at all, and it's definitely one that I'm going to wear a lot, even if it's not a 10 out of 10, you know? It's cute. Okay, so for this next one, I did mention, I think I showed the yarn for it in the last video again, and that yarn was sent to me for free because it was a test knit. So this yarn was sponsored by Isager for a test knit for Ullin Knitwear. Ullin Knitwear asked me if I would like to test a bralette pattern, and I have knit bralettes, which I love and wear all the time. Normally I wear them not as summer garments so much as winter garments, something that I would wear underneath a big jumper, say, and I really like this one a lot. It looked very tiny when I finished it, and now I've worn it for a few days. It has definitely stretched out a little bit more to my measurements. As I was saying, straps on this sort of thing tend to stretch out, and so the straps were definitely a little bit on the short side when I first finished it, and now they're a little bit long. So I might actually go back and take 5 rows off each strap or something just to get more of a comfortable fit. The yarn is Isager Eco Baby. I was sent 2 skeins to knit this, but actually I didn't even use up one. I think it took about 45 grams to knit this bralette. I was having a moment where I was like, did I forget to mention the size of everything I've knitted so far? Other than the scarf where I knitted the smaller size, everything else has just been something I made up, so there is no sizing. And I don't think this really has sizing either. You basically knit the band to your measurement, and it's quite interesting because it's not rib in the round, it's worked flat around the body and then seamed, and then stitches are picked up to knit the rest of the bralette. I don't want to talk too much about it and give stuff away, but it is a nice construction that I think works really well for a bralette like this. So yeah, the band was knitted to my measurements, and then I probably followed the instructions for the rest of the bralette for the B cut, but I'm not entirely sure. I will put the colour in the description. I think it's E2S or something like that. And yes, I think I got sidetracked when I was talking about it, but this yarn is a cotton and alpaca blend. This is alpaca that does not irritate me at all. It is completely soft and fine. It doesn't feel as luxurious as something like the cashmere or the merino silk, but it is pretty soft to the touch and completely non-scratchy. So yeah, it's not even all alpaca that bothers me, it's just sometimes alpaca bothers me. I think part of the reason it's stretched out so much is because of the cotton in it. I would guess it does tend to stretch out and not go back to its original shape as easily. The one mistake I made with this is I blocked it on top of the stove. It wasn't on or anything, but in this house we have a couple of dogs, and whenever I block things I have to find somewhere to put them where the dogs aren't going to get them, and I can't put them outside if the weather is bad. I don't want to put them on a table that it's going to cause damage to, or a table that we use often. And so finding a surface to block a garment on is kind of tricky. So anyway, I put it on the top of the stove, and I didn't think it was grubby, but it must have been because it has some little orange marks just on the back of the bralette. I'm hoping that they will wash out over time, and they're not super bad. And as I said, I was sent 2 skeins of this yarn to knit this bralette, but I only used about 45 grams, and so I have enough to make another. Actually, going back to the sizing thing, I'm sorry this is so all over the place. There are instructions for a wider band and also a thinner band, as well as wider straps and thin straps. So for this one I did the thinner band and also the thinner straps. Maybe I'll mix that up next time. Before I talk about my work in progress pieces, I finished the socks from the last episode. I am not going to talk so much about them because I think I spoke quite a lot about them last time when I had one sock finished already, so you did get to see what they look like. But the pattern is Kigi by Yuka. I knitted the 3rd of the 4 sizes, and I used a 2.5mm needle to do the quilting on the, what's this called? The quilting on the leg. And then I used a 2.25mm needle to knit the foot. Hopefully you can see what they look like. They're really pretty. I love this quilting stitch. I was saying in the last video that this particular blue is just a bit too blue for my taste. I'm trying to try out as many different sock yarns as possible, so I wanted to use it. This one is from Opal. It's just the standard Opal sock yarn, which somehow I've never used, despite it being the kind of sock yarn that I really like. I like a hard-wearing 75% wool, 25% nylon kind of a sock yarn most of the time. So I thought it might be nice to use it for a sock like this, where using it with white in the leg will make it look a little bit softer. The white, not that it really matters, I think is Drops Fabel in cream, and the cuffs are done with Cascade Heritage Solids, I think. The shade is called Lunar Rock. I used the Cascade and the Opal together for the Juniper socks that I showed 2 episodes ago as well. I think the 2 colours look really nice together. These socks fit pretty well. I like them a lot. I've worn them quite a few times and I am really happy with them overall. Again, I kind of wish they were a colour that I like a little more and that goes a little better with stuff. For example, I think that this blue is kind of hard to pair with things if you wear jeans a lot, which I do. The blue socks that I have tend to sort of clash with my jeans, and so I think I reach for grey socks the most, probably. But they're cute. They have a slip stitch detail along the foot as well, and a twisted broken rib heel flap. Hopefully you can see them a little better like this. They're knitted cuff down, and then you pick up stitches at the end to do this extra cuff at the top. So I did a surprisingly stretchy bind off because I find that it makes this top edge flare out the least. And yeah, the rest was just knitted cuff down as usual. I did a wedge toe and Kitchener stitched up the toe. To be honest, I'm not sure if I knitted these exactly to pattern. Some things like toes, I tend to just knit a wedge toe because I know that I like it and I can do it without thinking. So if the pattern specified something other than that, which I think it might have, I didn't do that. I did order the 52 Weeks of Socks, the new volume. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm really excited because I knitted a lot of pairs of socks out of the first 52 Weeks of Socks, and so I know that I will get my money's worth out of a book like this, I think. I am somebody who buys a lot of paid sock patterns. I knit a lot of socks. I wear hand knit socks every single day, pretty much, so I have a big collection, and I really love having a big collection. I have a sock in progress, but I'm going to show you my big work in progress first, I think. This is a work in progress that's long overdue in the sense that I bought the yarn for it last year, in September, I think, and I've been planning to knit it, and somebody actually very kindly gifted me the pattern on Ravelry as well, and then I just never cast it on. And so because I've been knitting a lot of things lately without patterns, just making up as I go along, like I think my last 3 big projects have been things that I've knitted without patterns, I was really craving some knitting where I can just do what somebody tells me to do and know that it will turn out well. And so of course I went for a petite knit pattern because I really love pretty much all of my jumpers that I've knitted from petite knit patterns. I know they're very popular, but they're also just super reliable. I like the fit of them, I know. And this one in particular, when it was first released, I think it was part of the Isager Botanica collection. Sorry, my brain's just saying Isager Breeze because they've just released that collection, and there are definitely a couple of things in that collection I would really like to knit. But yes, this was from the last collection, and it was the design that Petite Knit contributed to that collection. I wasn't planning on knitting it, and then when I was in a yarn shop, I saw they had knitted up a sample of it in like a cream and a green and put it in the shop window, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I literally bought most of the yarn for it in that shop immediately, which I guess is why they put the sample there, to make people like me do things like that. And I've just been waiting to cast it on ever since. So yeah, this is the sycamore sweater, and I am not using even close to the yarn that was suggested in the pattern. Because it was part of this Isager collection, what I noticed they tend to do, and I have mixed feelings about this because I understand why, but every single piece in those collections seems to be like 4 strands of Isager yarn held together for the whole thing, including mohair and expensive stuff like that. I believe this jumper is supposed to use for the main colour 1 strand of Jensen, which I'm trying to remember, I haven't seen it in a while. I think it's like a sport weight maybe, like a lighter DK. And then 1 strand of silk mohair with that, and that's knitted up on 5mm needles. And then for the stripes, I think it uses 3 strands of spinny in different colours, plus 1 strand of silk mohair. So that's like 6 different Isager yarns that you're getting to hold together for this thing, which is kind of insane. Although what I will say is that actually, I think this would be a really great project for using up scrap yarn. The yardage that you need for the main colour is surprisingly little. Am I crazy in saying it's like 600 or 700 meters or something for my size? Like, it's surprisingly not a lot at all. And then the stripes, again, you basically need 1 skein of each colour for the stripes, plus you could do the stripes in different colours. So I think if you had some scrap which you had a little more of, like some mohair and a DK or something, and you had like 700 meters of that, obviously you'll have to check, I might be completely wrong about it being 700, but I know that it was a lot less than I was expecting. And then if you also have a bunch of odd skeins or half skeins in thinner weights, like fingering weight, lace weight, anything like that, you can hold a bunch of those together for the different stripes and use them all up. So if you haven't seen this pattern before, it's a striped jumper. And the cool thing about it is that all of the stripes are tapered like this. So this one fully tapers out. I think the others are just thicker on one side than on the other. Now, normally when I'm knitting a pattern that someone else has written, I wouldn't say that like I feel like I could do it myself, because a lot of the time the fit is really good and there are little thoughtful details and things like that. But let me say, I could probably make up something that looks pretty similar. This one though, I'm so glad I'm following the pattern because I cannot imagine where you even start grading something like this. Like, I don't know if Petite Knit grades her own patterns, I would assume not, but like, whoever did this, I have so much respect for them. It is definitely not a beginner-friendly pattern. I think it's probably the hardest petite knit pattern I've knitted, and I've made quite a few. But I think if you are familiar with working saddle shoulders and raglans, because this has kind of got a bit of both going on, then you'll probably be fine. You just have to make sure that you read every line of the pattern really carefully. Like, it's all written out there and it is all clear, but if you skim read it, you will miss something. For example, when you're doing all the short row turns, you have markers in all of the short rows, and each row will say separately whether when you remove the marker from the short row turn, you put it on the needle or whether you put it like to the side. And you need to get that right. So you do have to read that carefully, every single line, even if it seems similar to another line. Don't make assumptions and read carefully. Other than that, I cast this on yesterday morning, and by last night I had already divided for the body and sleeves. I haven't knitted on it much this morning because I am a little bit nervous. I have to go back and start the second short row stripe now, so I need to be able to sit down for a while and really focus on it. But it is a really quick knit on 5mm needles. So the yarn that I'm using, as I said, not at all similar to the yarn specified in the pattern. I actually don't think that I brought any of the contrast colours that I'm using for the stripe to show, which is a shame. This is the main colour that I'm using. I'm not going to pronounce this because I am very monolingual and can't. It's a Danish yarn brand anyway. I think it's pretty popular. So for the main colour I'm just holding the single with no mohair. And then for the contrast colour, for the stripes, I'm using 3 strands of knitting for olive. I'm using 2 strands of the merino and 1 strand of the soft silk mohair. And I don't remember what the colours are, but I'm pretty sure I put them in the description of the video where I showed that I bought the yarn in September, October last year. And so I can probably look there and put the colours in the description. Each of those you only really need like 1 skein of maybe. So I think it wasn't too expensive, even though it is 3 strands held together. I am knitting a size up. I think I'm about half a stitch off gauge or something like that. Not significantly off gauge. But I'm not taking any risks, and I'd rather have it be slightly too oversized than a bit small. So yes, I am knitting a size small when my measurements and the size I normally knit in petite knit garments is an extra small. And I'm just having a good time with it, so I'm sure it'll be done fairly soon since it is proving to be such a quick knit. Before my camera battery runs out, I have one more work in progress to show you. I have a sock. It's a lace sock, I don't know if you can see. So, as usual, I'm knitting this sock up on 2.25mm Thiagu needles. The yarn that I'm using is Kremke Edelweiss Classic. This is, I think, 75/25, but it's non-superwash wool, and then the nylon comes from recycled plastic bottles, which I think is really cool. I got this from my ivory room. I actually have it in another colour as well, so I may actually make a second pair of socks with this yarn, because so far I am really liking it. It's not super soft or anything, it feels like a very standard sock yarn. But the fact that it doesn't require the production of new plastic, and also that it is non-superwash, is really appealing to me. So as usual, this has a heel flap and gusset, which is my preferred sock construction. I'm doing an eye of partridge, I think it's called, heel flap on this one. And the lace is only on the front of the sock. I was going to do it all the way around, but because of the way this lace works, the columns of stitches are diagonal rather than being vertical, so it doesn't stretch very much in this direction. It mostly stretches in this direction, which doesn't really help for getting it around your foot or over your heel. So yeah, it just has lace on the front, and I've done the complicated bit, I suppose, and now I just have to keep on going until it's finished. So I think in the next video I will have a pair of these socks to show most likely, and I may well release a pattern for this. It might be a free pattern. It's a pretty standard stitch pattern, I think. We'll see how much time I have. It might be something I do after final exams once I've graduated. So yeah, I think that's about it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be back again soon with another one, I'm sure, before I go back to university. Goodbye.